Let's get the latest aviation news now. Ben Vogel is editor of Jane's Airport Review and joins me in the studio. Ben, much was made during the World Cup in Brazil of how much it would cost, whether it would work, whether the aviation infrastructure would actually support the gazillions of football fans who'd be climbing on board and wanting to go off to see a match. That all seemed to happen, but we now are left with an infrastructure which is, I think I read somewhere, it feels like the America in the 1970s.
That's correct, yeah. Before the World Cup, listeners may remember, as you say, there were some worries about whether or not the aviation infrastructure would cope with the influx of passengers. The airports were a hit. There seemed to be few, if any, problems, but now there's another cloud on the horizon because the Brazilian government is having problems in its plan to upgrade other airports in the country. What they want to do, the Brazilian government, is have an airport within the reach of 96% of the population, which is quite an undertaking.
I was about to say, how feasible is that physically, given the nature of Brazil's... Well, just given the nature of Brazil's economy and its geography, it just seems
and
enormous.
Its politics.
Well, yes, we hadn't even got to that yet. It's the enormous ambition. It's an enormously ambitious project.
That's right. They're certainly aiming high, and now they're encountering one or two problems in delivering on this pledge. One of the reasons is politics, because there is a presidential election coming up. The policies of either side are not particularly clear as far as following through on this pledge to upgrade something like 270 airports. Financing as well as another issue, because the Brazilian economy is not performing perhaps quite as well as predicted when this plan was originally framed. So there may be budget cuts, there may be austerity, and that will affect what happens in terms of aviation infrastructure.
I mean, forgive me for sounding completely ignorant on this, but Brazil is a big place, but does anywhere need 270 regional airports?
A very good question. Well, airports are engines of economic growth.
Of course.
So
to have
a
them
country
within
like
100 kilometres, is there really any point in having so many?
I think there is, because Brazil is trying to drive the economy forward, and logistically, for logistic purposes, and also to drive tourism to the country, not just to the cities but to the regions as well. Having sound aviation infrastructure that's in a way future-proofed to deal with future growth is a very, very sound idea.
Okay, let's move on to the use of UAVs, those little things that float off in the sky above us. I think
right.
Every single newsroom in the world wants to use one every single day, and we hear all these talks about delivery companies wishing to use them. There seems to be a sort of a growing impetus now for them to become used commonplace, not necessarily just in military but also in civilian life.
That's right, that's the idea.
And so who now is trying to sort of get past all the red tape and get up in the air?
Well, as you say, there's a lot of talk about Amazon, Facebook and Google trying to use small unmanned aerial vehicles to produce their deliveries and interact with their customers. But another small advance has been the decision the other day by the Federal Aviation Administration to allow 6 small movie companies in the United States to use small unmanned aerial systems, drones, in the course of their operations. It's a tiny step towards commonplace use, but it's going to take a very long time before we see them in the skies as a routine.
Well, what needs to be done? Because there are so many, not just sort of logistical issues, but there's also safety issues and goodness knows what. Who needs to make the first step to get this to change?
That's a problem. There is an element of confusion, because in the end it does come down a lot to politics. And when the politicians get involved, it becomes very difficult to resolve this issue. There are so many factors involved. As you say, there are technical issues, there are regulatory issues, there are safety issues. And until all of those are overcome in some sort of harmony, it's going to be very, very hard to actually see these systems in routine use.
Thank you very much indeed, Ben, for joining me on the programme.